Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Jeff Rich, and this is The Lay of the Land. Uh, New show. We're going to talk about, obviously, Cleveland. That's the land in some circles. Others, it's not, but it's the name of the show. Um, we're going to do some things differently here. I've been writing about Cleveland sports for about 5-6 years now and kind of gotten to network a little bit, get to know people through social media and the various websites that I've written for. Currently with foreverrebuilding.com, which covers the Indians, the Browns, the Cavaliers, Cleveland State, and really anything relevant to the scene of sports in Northeast Ohio. Guests are going to vary. We're going to have some experts. We're going to do some friends and family. I'm probably going to talk to some people that, like myself, have Cleveland ties, but are currently living off the reservation, and the way we consume things may be a little bit different. But without further ado, let me bring in my first guest on this show. He's a very familiar name if you're familiar with the foreverrebuilding.com website. You can follow that on Twitter at rebuildingcle. He is Anthony Joki. He's the publisher of the site. Anthony, what's going on, man?
Oh, nothing much. It's an exciting time here, Cleveland with the NBA playoffs, and we're just finally looking towards getting that championship.
It's really a dream, and it really starts to feel, it's been kind of a weird, really couple of seasons for the Cavaliers. We never look a gift horse in the mouth, so we want to appreciate having a team in the postseason because it just happens so rarely. I mean, we're fortunate that we got a one-game playoff from the Cleveland Indians in 2013 and had a nice little run in 2007. You talk about it. I saw yesterday. I didn't even realize this. The Seattle Mariners have not been to the playoffs since 2001. So, and that's just one team. Like us, they lost a team that was the heart and soul of their city with the Sonics moving to Oklahoma City, and it's the playoffs are not something to be taken for granted. I know it's a very deep field, perhaps too deep. If you look at how the 7 and 8 seeds tend to fare in the opening round of the playoffs, but it should be chalk in the first round. The 4-5s and maybe the 3-6 matchups should be a little bit more compelling, lend itself to upset a little bit more. But it's good to have the Cavaliers in the playoffs as we speak to you on a Saturday morning. They are up 3-0 after a 101-91 victory on Friday night at the Palace at Auburn Hills. That wasn't all that was going on in Cleveland sports this week. The Cleveland Indians, after a rough weekend with the Mets, have a rough couple of days with the Seattle Mariners at home. They go up to Detroit, and wouldn't you know it, Cleveland has a great night in the city of Detroit, besting their rivals both in baseball and basketball. And there's Browns news because Cleveland is always about the Browns. I'm a little guilty of that myself. Perhaps the draft shouldn't be as high a priority as the playoffs. For some it is. For some it's definitely not. But we start up in Detroit at Comerica Field, where the Indians get a 2-1 victory behind some decent pitching from Josh Tomlin. And Carlos Santana, hitting a new spot in the lineup, goes deep and sets the tone right away. Marlon Byrd adds a home run later, and the Indians squeak by 2-1, which kind of been the story of the season. Has just been kind of just squeaking them out and trying to tread water maybe until Michael Brantley's back from his injury.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't want to say his replacement, but one of the guys filling in, Naquin, I've been pretty surprised with. We I think we were hoping for him just to tread water until Brantley got back, but he's hitting over 300 so far. And I think that's been one of the healthy surprises in the outfield. It's kind of helped stabilize that bottom of the lineup.
Yeah, what do you think of Napoli coming into the fold? I mean, is it just feast or famine with this guy, or is this what what the Indians kind of expected to add to the middle of their lineup and give themselves an opportunity to let Carlos Santana DH and have another glove at first base?
I think he's a much better version of what you got with Mark Reynolds and Brandon Moss. I think his power is more reliable. He brings stability to the middle of the lineup, whereas those two guys, they were, it was really feast or famine. It was strike out or home run. I think Napoli though is going to sustain it over the course of the year as opposed to those guys.
Do you think he's the only rookie we see this year?
Naquin?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know if there's any young relievers that could come in or a younger starting pitcher, but I would be very surprised to see the likes of Zimmer or Frazier this year.
How about Urshela? I mean, Juan Uribe, for me as a fan, is very frustrating to watch. It just reminds me of all, Moss and Reynolds were probably, not so much Reynolds because they let him go after a couple of months, but, those guys were guys that, just kind of were the more successful guys. They pulled off the scrap heap. I mean, I think that the top of the scale is Scott Kazmir. The bottom is probably a veteran whose name I've forgotten, or maybe the second or third year Jason Giambi in an Indians uniform.
Yeah, I think Uribe was brought in just to give Urshela a little bit of time. He'll definitely be up here this season. It's just a matter of when. And when he does come up, it's his job to lose. I think Uribe is just a placeholder right now.
All right. Has the ship sailed on Lonnie Chisenhall at third base? And, how long can we anticipate it's going to take for him to get his sea legs under him in a major league uniform this year after starting on the DL?
Yeah, I think you're done seeing him at third. I'm pretty sure Gio's going to be the long term, unless for some reason he gets hurt and Uribe gets hurt. That's who you might throw over there. Maybe throw Jose Ramirez over there. As far as him this season, I don't know. He's such a streaky guy. I think it was 2 years ago after the All-Star break, he went on that tear, came in last year and just completely stunk it up for the better part of the year. So, you never know what you're going to get with him.
Is what you see is what you get with Francisco Lindor. I mean, does this kid have lofty expectations and he reaches or exceeds them in almost every case? I mean, he just checks all the boxes. It's really a treat to see the young shortstop Francisco Lindor in his first full season with the Tribe.
I have more of a special feeling for him because he's Puerto Rican just like me, and we love our baseball, and it's fun to see a kid come in with. I can't tell you the last time I've seen an Indians player come in with his kind of personality, him smiling all the time, just enjoying the game of baseball. You don't see too many baseball players enjoy what they do, and he really seems to do that.
Frankie was a high pick in 2011. I think he went 8, and then Javier Baez went 9 to the Cubs in the draft. I know not a lot of people are going to pay a lot of attention to the major league draft, but with the teams getting it right at the top of the draft, I think that we pay a lot more attention. I mean, I actually watched the draft where the Indians took Clint Frazier out of high school in Georgia live on the MLB network. It doesn't quite work the same way because you don't have the hysteria of something like college football surrounding these guys like you would with the NFL draft. But the Indians got the pick wrong for so many years. I mean, you think of Trevor Crowe and Jeremy Sowers. Chisenhall might be kind of where they started to turn the corner. I know that they didn't hang on to Drew Pomeranz and Alex White, who they traded for Ubaldo Jimenez a couple years ago. But it seems like the scouting, the drafting is getting better, and that's an absolute mandate for a small market club like the Cleveland Indians are in the year 2016.
Yeah, it's the only way you're going to really survive. Innings have shown they're not going to throw out a ton of money anymore. After Swisher and Bourne, I know that's left a sour taste in their mouth. With draft picks, you got to hit on them. At least the first rounders. If you're lucky, you hit on other rounds. It's just some guy from the 46th round could make an impact 3 or 4 years down the road that you had no idea was going to. It's just a complete crapshoot.
Well, the closer, Cody Allen, he comes up. He's like one of the third or fourth player from his draft, and he was a late round pick. I want to say he was like a 26th round pick, and he just kind of got fast tracked through the farm system. ends up making a big difference in the bullpen right away and kind of assumed the closer role he really hasn't had a full-time occupant of that job since probably Chris Perez, in all honesty, right?
Yeah, anytime you get a guy or a reliever who's a power arm, he has a shot to propel himself up pretty quickly.
Would you say that everybody except or perhaps including Minnesota is probably really in the race? I know it's not even May yet in the American League Central Division. It seems like there's going to be some parity. It seems like the Indians, the Tigers, the Royals, and probably the White Sox too. They're going to battle this year.
I really wouldn't discount the Twins. I know they've had such a rough start, but I think there's enough talent on that team, enough young talent to where if they start playing well, I think they have. I wouldn't say a shot to win it, but they'll hang around. They won't completely fall off the earth like they have in these first couple of weeks.
I'm going to tell you, I like Minnesota more than Chicago, regardless of the records at this point, because I think that Robert Ventura is just a guy that kind of goes through the motions. He's almost managing that team as a favor to ownership and Kenny Williams, whereas I think that Minnesota, that's a tough gig to take. I mean, you look at the last 30 years, it's been Tom Kelly, Ron Gardenhire, and now Paul Molitor. And I think that as natural of a fit as Gardy was for the Twins, that's how unnatural it is to see Robin Ventura trying to run a ball club. But you never know. You see these guys turn around. I mean, Ned Yost was left for dead in Milwaukee, and now he's a genius in Kansas City.
I think I mentioned this to you last week, but I really miss Gardenhire and Eric Wedge arguments. Gardy was such a fun guy to watch when he decided to go off. I really think that Molitor is going to do something with this young Twins team, and I kind of agree with you that they're better than the White Sox. Maybe not on paper, but over the course of the year, you get guys like Byron Buxton going, and they're going to be really hard to beat.
This is something I've been thinking about over the last couple of months is, the Browns obviously have the Steelers. The Cavs kind of have whoever the other top team is. But the Indians, it just never really feels like they have a rival. It feels like it's budding with Detroit still, but it's just never quite gotten there. And I think that's a good thing because you look at the years the Indians are successful, because who cares about the rest? Who cares about mediocre? You look at the years that they have a chance to flirt with success, and their rival is whoever they're battling with in the division. And we've seen it since they went to 3 divisions in '94 that, Detroit, Kansas City, the Chicago White Sox, all of these teams have been a threat to the Indians, and they've all been really gritty. And it's interesting because, the Midwest, it's the heart of America. It's a blue collar area, though though I wouldn't stereotype every place like that anymore. I think that Cleveland in particular has an upper class segment that really never gets talked about, but they do exist. But it's a lot of fun to watch. I think 19 division games is a lot, especially when you don't play everybody in Major League Baseball, and it's just cool to see in lieu of a rival that every team in the American League Central could potentially have that factor going into games in August and September, just because there's no throw out the records when these two teams play each other. But there's also the potential for it every season, and it's predicated on success the way it should be.
Yeah, as far as the rivals, I think that Kansas City's kind of been the main one for the past 4 or 5 years. Even though they've only been a factor the last couple of years. Before that, both teams, both the Indians and the Royals, were young teams, and they were fighting for the right, basically, to fight Detroit for the crown, and Kansas City eventually won that. I mean, you saw it get chippy back in the days of Jack Hanahan with the Royals. That these two teams are going to go at this year. I mean, really all 5 teams in the Central are going to go at it this year.
I definitely think so. The rest of Major League, the American League doesn't look that great around the Central. I think that the Central is probably, with the exception of the National League Central, where you have the Pirates, the Cubs, and the Cardinals going at it. I think that the American League Central is one of the better divisions in baseball. I think that we're going to see that play out. Boston doesn't seem to be all the way there this year. Tampa, if they can't get their ace to start winning ball games, Chris Archer's a great pitcher, but it's just not working out there. Speaking of which, Indians pitching, it comes in highly touted. Corey Kluber's not getting the wins, but what else is new? But we're seeing some good stuff throughout the rest of the rotation, particularly Carlos Carrasco and Danny Salazar.
Yeah, those two guys were expected to do well, and they're doing that to start this year. Kluber struggled a little bit has struggled with the long ball. I don't know if that's just a product of he needs to get his sinker down a little bit more, but
they're all operating high in the strike zone. Especially Carrasco's living up there this year, and he's been burnt a few times, but it hasn't been too bad.
Yeah, what I'm worried about is Cody Anderson. I don't know if he can piece it together. I really hope he does. If not, you have so many different options that you could go with. You could bring Bauer out. You could bring TJ House up. Can't remember who else is down there, but they have quite a few options if Anderson really continues to struggle.
Bauer, the number 2 overall pick from Arizona. There was something up when the Diamondbacks were willing to part with a prospect like that so early in the process. Trevor's kind of been referred to as quote unquote a pain in the ass. But number 2 pick, I know that not every pick sticks in baseball, but when do you start putting the bust label on him, or is that already been, has he already been branded as a bust?
I think, whenever they pull him out of the bullpen, whenever they feel like he's ready to start again, if he can't piece it back together after that point, I think that's really when the label will start to stick with him.
Yeah, and he'll be a reclamation project for somebody else because there's a ton of talent there. He's just really got to harness it. So from the number 2 overall pick in Major League Baseball to the number 2 overall pick in the 2016 National Football League draft, we're going to talk about some Cleveland Browns stuff. Probably not as sexy a draft going in because the Browns have forfeited the pick that could have netted them a franchise quarterback, which I have to laugh about because it's a term that's just thrown around so loosely. You can't really establish anybody as a franchise quarterback until they do good things, until they're, first of all, with your franchise, and second of all, prove themselves a little bit, even if it's just a small sample size, perhaps like we saw with Jameis Winston in his rookie season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I really wanted Carson Wentz. I thought that he mostly compared with Roethlisberger a little bit as far as his size and his arm and being mobile. But, I trust Hugh, and if he thinks that neither of those two guys are going to be franchise quarterbacks, which I know he said there's a lot of franchise players in the draft. The left tackle is a franchise piece. The wide receiver is a franchise piece. You said it gets thrown around loosely. That's an understatement. If Hugh decide, well, obviously they decided that the top 2 guys, Goff and Wentz, aren't the guys. Maybe he has his eye on someone else to come in as a rookie and play quarterback. There's Lynch, there's kind of Cook, there's Hackenberg, which I'm kind of surprised he's fallen as far as he has, but he just got beat up at Penn State.
Yeah, I was really mad at Bill O'Brien for leaving guys like Hackenberg, guys that committed to the program thinking they were going to go 4 years without playing in a bowl game or, playing for a conference championship. These guys really committed to Bill O'Brien. I'm not him. I understand if you're an NFL guy, you want to be in the NFL. He was a good placeholder. James Franklin hasn't been all he's been cracked up to be, and I think it really hurt Christian Hackenberg as far as his development's concerned over the last couple seasons at Penn State. I think that if he goes to the right situation, I really like him a lot as a third or fourth rounder. Not a big fan of Cook. I think that Cook tends to disappear in the big moment. College football is a tough thing to evaluate on a scale of wins and losses, especially from the quarterback position, especially in a conference like the Big Ten where you really grind it out and run the football. Connor Cook doesn't excite me all that much. Lynch, he's got the size, but he's kind of slipped from being in that conversation with Goff and Wentz to being in a group with the others. And then you have some project players like Jacoby Brissett, Cardale Jones. I don't think the Kevin Hogan's as much of a project as he's the guy that he's like Kirk Cousins. I think that he can win given the right situation, given the right amount of trust and having the right pieces around him. Anyway, the trade goes down. The chips are falling with this draft. Titans are at number 1. They have Marcus Mariota. They're not going to get all the value out of number 1 by keeping it. So they make a deal. They take a Godfather deal from Les Snead and the Rams. A week passes. The Browns have a little more leverage because that one of those teams is taking it. That the Rams are trading into that spot to take a quarterback. If there's 2 in this draft, you have the other one. That's why Philadelphia came calling. We heard that San Francisco was also in the running, but this is how it goes down. The Browns trade the number 2 overall pick to the Eagles and also a conditional round 5 pick in 2017. The Eagles are actually the first team to ever trade for a compensatory pick, and they give the Browns the number 8 overall pick, which they had from Miami, the 77 overall pick, which is a mid-third rounder that they had from Detroit, and the 4th round pick at number 100 from Tennessee is it's a high 4th round pick. What else am I looking at? A round 1 pick next year. I don't know how good we expect Philadelphia to be, but you figure that pick to be somewhere from 10 to 20, unless the Eagles are just god awful or Doug Peterson is a genius and they figure it all out. So round 1 pick in 2017, round 2 pick in 2018. Quite the haul to move down 6 spots and get out of a position that they probably didn't want to pick the player that was slotted in that spot for, right?
Yeah, that they robbed the Eagles, and looking at this draft and looking at next year's draft, they have a ton of picks coming. Now, back in 2009, they were able to get an extra pick when they traded with the Jets. 2011, they got extra picks when they traded with the Falcons, and they didn't hit on those picks. Just to recap a little, Browns got the 15th pick from the Jets and the 52nd pick from the Jets as well. You got Alex Mack and Mohamed Massaquoi. Obviously, Mack was around for 5-6 years, and if the Browns can get a player that lasts that long, even on the team, let alone being a starter, I would say that's kind of a successful pick.
It's a pretty sad state of affairs when you have to, when you paint it like that. But trading back, when they got Mack, but they didn't get a lot of value from the Jets. Yeah, they got guys like Jason Trusnick and a guy named Coleman, whose first name escapes me. It was just Coleman. Yeah, I mean, it was just warm bodies, basically, that Rex Ryan and Woody Johnson, and I think Tannenbaum was over there in New York at the time. They just gave Eric Mancini warm bodies, and he'd rather work with those than the egos he inherited from the Cornell regime. But that's pretty ancient history. When they moved back and they picked up Phil Taylor, who they just released before the season this year. When they moved back in that draft and Atlanta takes Julio Jones, didn't they move back several times? And the only reason I bring that up is because I look at them at 8, and if they don't love if their guy's not there at 8, I think that they're counting on 1 or 2 guys being there. At teams addressing other needs. You look at it, they've got the Chargers and the Cowboys picking right behind them. Jacksonville, Baltimore, it's going to really stink if Baltimore grabs a player that's the next great thing that we kind of just traded down and let Baltimore have, but they've got Baltimore. You know, a lot of the mocks have Baltimore taking an offensive lineman, and there's a lot of them. And that's why I think the Browns have the potential to trade back again, because Conklin from Michigan State, his stock is soaring. I think a lot of people believe in Ronnie Stanley, and then you got Laramie Tunsil, who was a consensus number 1 overall pick at one point, the top offensive tackle. You're not even sure that he's even that anymore. I mean, he could be the first tackle taken, but I look at the Browns. They have Joe Thomas. I don't believe in drafting left tackles to play right tackle to develop into NFL left tackles. So I think if there's value for an offensive lineman at 8, I think the Browns drop back again. It'd be really nice if they could grab another first for next year, or perhaps even a second for this year, to get Hugh Jackson and Sashi Brown out of the blocks the right way.
What I've been thinking a little bit is, what if Tunsil falls to them at 8? They decided to take Tunsil and trade Joe Thomas and get a second first-round pick in this year's draft. That would really allow them to do something special, and I really think that they would, kind of win the draft if they were able to pull something like that off.
Anthony, I don't love that, and here's why: because of guys like Levi Brown. I look at Jokel. I can't believe that people could look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, see the opportunity for them to take somebody to really protect Blake Bortles' blindside, and for them to take a guy like Miles Jack or Joey Bosa or DeForest Buckner. I just don't see any way that Jacksonville could possibly pass up on the opportunity to fix their mistake from a couple years ago when they took Jokel in the top 5.
Yeah,
and I don't think that the Browns can necessarily, and what that leads to is that, the Browns find themselves needing a left tackle if this guy's a bust, whereas you have a proven commodity in Joe Thomas. And I just don't think that you're going to get, you're not going to get the number 3 overall pick for him. You're going to get a contender trading for him, that their first is going to be low, their second is going to be low in the second round. And at the end of the day, I think that you let Joe Thomas do what so few Cleveland athletes have ever done, and go wire to wire with a career that, for others may not even necessarily be Hall of Fame caliber, but in Joe Thomas's case, it is. I think that he should go wire to wire with the Browns, and I hope that they can contend before it's time for him to hang them up.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll be able to do something. I don't think they'll be able to contend before he hangs it up. He has 2 or 3 years left on his contract, and maybe that third year.
He seems like a guy that'd be content to walk away from the game and go, hang out at his hunting cabin up in Wisconsin.
I mean, when he was drafted, that's what he was doing. He was sent on a fishing boat and not attending the draft. If someone really wants an offensive lineman at 8, you touched on it a little bit. It'll be someone from the second half of the draft. Someone like Denver who's picking at 31, or Seattle possibly.
See, I'd like them to inch down. I don't want them trading with playoff teams. I want them to trade down just a couple slots, kind of see what's there when they're picking. Listen for offers. I'd really like to see them add a wide receiver. I think that if they can't get Miles Jack or Jalen Ramsey with the 8th pick, and it's crazy because you talk about how anemic the Browns' offense is, but the players that you want to add in the top 10 of the draft may not necessarily, I don't think that it's worth the while to take a guy like Corey Coleman with the number 8 overall pick. I really think that you can get down into the mid-teens, even the early 20s, and grab a guy maybe like Sterling Shepard from Oklahoma or Josh Doxson from TCU, who I think is going to be a great player at the next level. I mean, you're looking at a receiving core that, known commodity. Who's your top? You have Terrell Pryor. You have Hawkins, Hartline, Barnage a tight end. I mean, you could really stand to upgrade that receiving core. If you get Josh Gordon back, it's a bonus. But really start. I think for the first time, I think this latest incident with Josh Gordon has got us all just. Even if you were the last person holding out hope for Gordon just to come back and put these last couple of years of suspension behind him, that he could move on. And I think with this latest incident, if he's failing a drug test, as he's reapplying for or applying for reinstatement to the league, I just don't think that Gordon's priorities are where they need to be, and you just can't count on him for that reason.
Yeah, they have to plan for life without him. Which they didn't do last year or the year before. When they had a chance to take receivers that turned out to be kind of decent.
I was upset they didn't take my boy Jalen Strong from ASU last year. It really looked like it was going to happen. I think they even traded up, and I'm not sure if that was the Irving pick or that was a second-round pick. But, yeah, the Browns had opportunities to take receivers, and they went in other directions.
If Doxson doesn't get hurt at TCU, I really think he's one of those top 5 picks. He's a very explosive player. Just like you, he's a guy that I really like, and I think that there's an opportunity for the Browns to get him, and I think there's real interest there. But I don't know what your draft philosophy is, and how you think they should build, but I really think that a team should be built inside out. So you get to the line, the quarterback, then you take all those skill position leaders. Same with defense. You take the linebackers, the pass rushers, then you go for the corners and safeties. I don't know what you think.
I don't think it's as straightforward as that. I think that you look at the interior. I think that nobody takes guards in the first round. Nobody takes centers in the top 15, top 20. Tackles go really high if they play on the left side. Play on the right side, they're kind of right there with the guards. Maybe a second round pick is where you're going to get the value. Running, I'm almost completely adverse to taking a running back in the top 10. We've seen obviously special talents in drafts where the Browns have had high picks. Where they took Joe Thomas, the Vikings took Adrian Peterson, Todd Gurley's turned out to be the goods for the Rams, but for every one of those, there's probably 10 Trent Richardsons or just players that just don't live up to the hype, and the position's got such a short shelf life on it that I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking if you're picking at 8, Ezekiel Elliott falls into your lap. You look at what you've got at running back with Isaiah Crowell and Duke Johnson at the moment, and I just look at that as saying, where else do we have the needs? You have a very expensive defense that I think was very poorly coached. I think that Ray Horton's going to fix that. So it would be great to have a playmaker, especially with Tayshaun Gibson and Carlos Dansby being out of the fold. That's why I like Jack, and that's why I like Ramsey. I look at Ramsey as like an Eric Berry type. Maybe not an Ed Reed. I would have said Ed Reed before, in the same breath before he got picked. But he had a better career than even I imagined. I think that he was drafted pretty high in the draft where the Browns took Jeff Fain. I might be off on that. That might be the William Green draft, but I really like Reed coming out of Miami. I really like Berry coming out of Tennessee, and I really like Ramsey coming out of Florida State.
There's a lot of good defensive players that are going to go in the top 10 between Ramsey, Bosa, Jack, Buckner, Hargreaves. So
I think Hargreaves is going to fall. I think some team's going to be really lucky to land him.
I kind of think that Bosa might fall a little bit, especially if you look at the teams that are now there. Are the Chargers going to take him? I don't think so. People have been back and forth on what the Chargers are going to do. I think it's pretty obvious. I think that they end up taking Ramsey just because they lose Eric Weddle. They really have no personality in that secondary. I think that Ramsey's a difference maker. You look around that division, you got Carr, you got Andy Reid, so you have Alex Smith, but you don't know how long that's going to last. And, the Broncos are probably going to pick up somebody that could throw the ball eventually. So that's going to be a tough division to play in. I think that that's a position that, and he's the best player available as far as I'm concerned. He's the best player available at 1. This could be a draft where Ramsey went 1 and Miles Jack went 2, if not for the injuries and the need for quarterback. And you go down a little bit. I think the Cowboys. I really think that Zeke could go there. He's a weapon for Romo, and they need to surround Romo as best as they can with offensive talent. They have a limited window before before Romo's done, and he could already be done.
They got a little bit cute. They got a little bit too cute with the running back position, letting DeMarco Murray walk. I think that Stephen Jones and Jason Garrett looked at that offensive line and said, hey, we could just kind of plug free agents in, do running back by committee. And it just didn't work out as well. Romo being out is part of that, obviously. But I think that Ezekiel Elliott would be a fantastic fit in Dallas. It depends, though. I mean, if Miles Jack's there, if DeForest Buckner's there. Buckner seems to be, Buckner and Ramsey seem to be kind of the guys that don't come with any question marks. Joey Bosa, Joey Bosa's done nothing to hurt his stock. He's been a fantastic athlete since he stepped on campus at Ohio State. And, I think we get caught up in skin color. We talk a lot about J.J. Watt. But I think about Jadeveon Clowney. I don't have any scientific reason to believe it. I just worry about Bosa. I worry about how much he dominated the college game and if that's going to necessarily translate to the NFL, if he's going to be able to get around the NFL left tackles.
Is Bosa going to max out at Paul Kruger level? That might be the fear why he's kind of dropped from 1 to who knows where he's going to go, 5, 6.
Could you see him falling out of the top 10?
No, because I still think he's the top pass rusher in the draft. He has competition obviously with Buckner and the 3-4 defense, but he's one of those guys that's proven everything in college. And, that doesn't mean a whole lot when it comes to the NFL, but he's going to be a plug-in, get 8 or 9 sacks guy, and you know what you're going to get with him.
Yeah, he's not going to be the only Ohio State Buckeye taken in the first round. I mean, you look through what they've got. I like a guy like Eli Apple. I think Darren, I like Darren Lee and Josh Perry. The tandem, they made each other better. I think you kind of go back to the days of AJ Hawk and Bobby Carpenter and Anthony. Oh God, what was his? I'd screw up his last name. It starts with an SCH, but Schlegel. I think that's right. Yeah. But, they all grew their hair long for Pat Tillman. I kind of saw Carpenter refer to it on Twitter. It was just I believe it was the 13-year anniversary of Tillman's death in Afghanistan, which is really neither here nor there at this point. But lots of Ohio State Buckeyes. You look at Elliott. I think you look at Michael Thomas as a potential target for the Browns at 32. It's going to be interesting. I'm more curious about Ohio State going into 2016 than I was the year after they won the national championship. I mean, you look at all this talent they're losing in the NFL draft, and you wonder how Urban Meyer can possibly reload down there.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched the spring game yet. I have, or
I have not, and I'm not going to.
I'm curious to see what Bear's going to do this year, because the offense is going to go as he goes. They recruit so well and they plug in skill guy after skill guy, but losing Taylor Decker on the offensive line scares me. It's not an easy guy to replace. When you lose Elliott, Michael Thomas, whoever else they lost that offense. They lost 12 starters, I think, total. It's going to be an interesting season this year.
It seems like they're doing an okay job developing offensive linemen. NFL analysts shouted all the time how and they always cite Oregon, how the college linemen get to the NFL and they don't know how to block because of these because of these spread schemes that the offenses have been running since Urban Meyer proved it can be successful at Florida back in 2006. I think that you just get to the point where you're able to Get these sophomores playing right away to say, hey, you're going to sit as a freshman, you're going to play as a sophomore and junior, and if you're ready for the NFL, you're going to go to the NFL, or you're going to, or you're going to try to be an All-American your senior year and help us win a national championship.
Yeah, they talked about a little bit recently, and I forget where I heard it, but it's interesting how many guys they redshirted last year that are probably going to start as sophomores this year, and those skill positions, and Urban's kind of gone in with the recruiting approach that, okay, I'm going to protect your kid who I know can make the NFL. I'm going to sit him the first year. He's going to only play 2 years and come out as a redshirt sophomore. So, I have confidence that the season's going to go as they expect. They have a tough game the third week of the season when they go to Oklahoma. It's going to be a quick test after Bowling Green and Tulsa. That's going to set the tone for the rest of their season, and if they can compete for the Big Ten title.
Oklahoma can really run the ball well. They got both of their bruisers back at running back. Baker Mayfield's proven to be no slouch. It's gonna be a tough game. I mean, Ohio State, everybody knocks their schedule all the time, but if you put one Oklahoma, Texas, USC, Notre Dame on the schedule, and you play in a formidable conference, I think that the Buckeyes' biggest problem is selling everybody else on what they're doing to the Big Ten.
Yeah, and this year they go to Wisconsin, to Penn State, and to Michigan State. Those are all 3 very tough places to play, and I would assume they'll all be night games as well. So those are going to be electric atmospheres and hard games to win.
I think Michigan State might, this isn't the bag Connor Cook hour, but I think the Michigan State, they proved that they can beat Ohio State without Cook a year ago. If they stick to what they know and they run the football and they play intimidating defense, and they're losing some players on the defensive side of the ball. Actually, I like that Shalik Calhoun a lot, for the Browns in the 3rd or 4th round. We got to get somebody in Cleveland that can actually touch the quarterback. Maybe Mingo putting the weight on is going to help him get to the quarterback. Maybe Kruger playing for Ray Horton is going to be a good fit. Or maybe the Browns end up with a guy like Bosa or Buckner.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what Horton's going to do with Kruger. He excelled so much that first year under him that he's kind of fallen off since then. So I'm pretty confident that they could use him the right way. And with Mingo, they drafted Mingo for Ray Horton to use, and now he finally gets to use him. Whether it's going to be as a pass rusher, it's yet to be seen. I think he could play safety a little bit. He's such a tremendous athlete. He could fly over the football field. So we'll see what he ends up doing with him.
Yeah, hope springs eternal. The Browns coaching staff can turn around a lot of these guys. I mean, I really like to see Justin Gilbert playing opposite Joe Hayden. Assuming the Browns don't take Hargreaves. You'd like to upgrade for Teron Williams. You'd like to just get Joe Hayden, but get the prime Joe Hayden back. But we'll see how he bounces back from the concussions and and the surgery and everything else. But I think that Joe Hayden's got to look at himself, and he's not the top dog in Cleveland anymore. I don't think that anything's guaranteed with Hugh Jackson. We've seen that this front office doesn't make emotional decisions. They make they make business decisions. They make football decisions. Hopefully they fix it with the draft. Obviously they didn't do a ton in free agency. They kept themselves out of the Josh Norman conversation. And does that Josh Norman contract, 5 years, $75 million to Washington at the age of 28, does that just scream Daniel Snyder wants people to pay attention to him?
I don't know. I think that obviously Norman's a very good player, and I'm very surprised that Carolina just kind of let him go. They pulled the franchise tag from him. Snyder, he's trying to save face a little bit. It won't be too much longer before the Redskins don't exist, and that's a battle he's been taking on for so many years. Who knows what's going to happen in Washington?
Hey, let me go on a tangent on that. Where are you at on this on this Chief Wahoo thing with the Indians. On one hand, it seems like they kind of just sit on the fence, and they don't say they don't say that we don't care what you think. I mean, they're not belligerent about it, but they are belligerent in the fact that they really that they've heard the cries for years and years. That that they're they or Major League Baseball has forced them to make the decision that Block C is going to be their primary logo, which shows up on score overlays, website menus when you're buying MLB merchandise, things like that. I'm kind of somewhere between. They really should get rid of it because it's offensive, and they should probably just get rid of it because it's not worth the stupid fight anymore.
Yeah, that's a topic I've always stayed away from.
Okay, and fair enough. We could move on. We got to talk about the Cavs.
Yeah, no, I really hardly let my political views known.
I don't think that this is so much political. Like I said, we can move on. I don't think it's a political thing because I've seen liberals that proudly rock Chief Wahoo, and I've seen conservatives that say I'm a conservative. This isn't a conservative thing. This is a just do this thing. So, the Cavaliers up 3-0 on Detroit. They tend to tinker around, or Detroit just runs out of gas, but. The first halves have been scary. You're like, are we watching a bad 8 seed from the Eastern Conference, or are the Cavs just playing down to their opponent? And then the second half happens, and the Cavs kind of figure out what they can do. Some of that might be that Tyronn Lue is able to, with his talent, outcoach Stan Van Gundy, which is something we didn't see Mike Brown do when Van Gundy was with the Magic in 2009.
Yeah, I'm very happy that they made the switch to Lue. It was kind of shocking. It happened on a random Friday afternoon.
After a victory.
Yeah, and they just beat the Clippers, which is ironic because Lue coached under Doc Rivers for the longest time. Lue's someone who's going to be the next great coach in the NBA. A lot of people talk about Brad Stevens, but he finally won his first playoff game in 6 tries, or 7 tries last night.
And they almost let that one get away too. You watch the Atlanta Hawks. I'd much rather play the Hawks than the Celtics. I buy into the Brad Stevens hype a little bit. Not that Budenholzer's a bad coach in Atlanta. I just think that we saw the best Atlanta the best team that Atlanta could put on the floor in the 2014-15 season, and we saw what the Cavaliers were able to do them in the Eastern Conference Finals a year ago. The Celtics are just scrappy, and the Kelly Olynyk thing aside, I just think that they play so much above their talent level, and then you add Isaiah Thomas to the mix. If you can get anything out of Smart and Crowder, that's a team that can take you deep, if not upset you as a contender in the Eastern Conference. I don't think it's going to happen to the Cavaliers, but I think that if you look at that potential, that one against the 4 or 5, it could be a difficult series, and it can wear you out before you have to play potentially the Heat and then the Western Conference champion.
Yeah, I don't want to play the Celtics. Me and Chris have talked a bit about it extensively.
You and Chris Poltrone on the Too Deep in the Q podcast, which is a Forever Rebuilding product.
Yeah, we talk about it extensively. We don't want to play them. We don't want to play Miami. They have extra motivation because, the Celtics and LeBron, the Celtics fans just absolutely killed the guy. Last year it was the closest sweep in NBA history. It seemed like with them, and you're right. They play scrappy. I don't want to say they play to hurt people, but they play with a higher level of physicality as compared to the rest of the teams in the NBA, which is something you hardly see anymore. And that's why they compete every night, is because they're a lot more physical than every other team in the NBA is. Miami, Pat Riley, Dwayne Wade, Eric Spoelstra are just licking their chops at the opportunity to play LeBron in the playoffs. I don't think they'll beat the Cavs in a 7-game series, but that's one that could turn into the 2009 Orlando Magic series where we expected to beat the Magic. We didn't think that they were anything compared to us, but
Oh, we were supposed to get Kobe and LeBron in the finals. That was,
yes.
I mean, that was the one opportunity. You know, I look at the missed opportunity there. I kind of put it right there with the 2003 World Series, which should have been Cubs and Red Sox, and it ended up being Yankees and Marlins. There's just certain things that I want to see, and when I don't get them, I get disappointed, almost like they were supposed to happen.
If we could have seen LeBron and Kobe in the finals, it would have been one of the greatest finals ever. And I don't know who would have won that series. I know the Lakers eventually beat the Magic, but you know we were supposed to play the Rockies in '07 in the World Series, and I'm fairly confident that we would just destroy them. But you know the rest of the Eastern Conference is it's gotten so much better. It's finally teetering from the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference in terms of depth. Um, as far as who you'll face in the finals, uh, you know,
I want Golden State. I want Golden State for more reasons, because I think it's a more winnable series than playing San Antonio.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with San Antonio, but Popovich seems to have a hex on LeBron. Every time Pop plays him in the finals, there's something he does to just frustrate LeBron and cause him not to play as well. But
well, now he's got Kawhi Leonard, who is probably the closest thing you have to the anti-LeBron in the league. I mean, LeBron had his battles with the scorers. I mean, Paul Pierce, Chauncey Billups, over the years, but there's not. I don't think that there's a defender in the West that could defend LeBron James anywhere near in the neighborhood the way that Leonard can. And Leonard could stroke the ball. He can get to the rim. I mean, this was a player that, I really thought, in the wake of LeBron going to Miami and the Cavs having those 2 high picks in 2011, that they should have replaced the small forward, and the best small forward in that draft was Leonard, and he falls all the way to San Antonio.
But they brought in Omri Caspi. That was supposed to be the solution.
I don't think the Cavs had a plan for the small forward position until they got Deng, which was right before LeBron came back. Anyway, I just think that they were they hinged all of their hopes on pairing LeBron, on being able to bring LeBron back to Cleveland and pair him with a bunch of lottery picks, and those bunch of lottery picks turned out to be the 2 guys they got the first year in Tristan Thompson and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't know LeBron was leaving, so when you went into the NBA draft, they had nothing. I don't think they had a first round pick, so that just delayed the process even more. Which I would think the draft should be after free agency, so you could kind of help things out a little bit. But if they play Golden State, and if they beat Golden State, I don't know where you stand on this, but me and Chris are of the contention that it's going to be one of the top 5, maybe if not one of the greatest accomplishments in all of sports history, because you get the Cavs or Cleveland winning its first title in 52 years, and you beat the best regular season team ever in the history of the NBA.
Oh, and it sets up a hell of a 2016-2017 season too, especially if you're coming into LeBron's 3rd season with the Cavs, and Golden State has a championship over them. They have a championship over Golden State. Everybody's going to wait for the rubber match, and suddenly a team from Oakland, California, and a team from Cleveland, Ohio are the new are the the 2010s version of the Celtics Lakers, from the 70s and 80s. So I think it's got a lot of really cool potential. But hey, it's almost time to get out of here. I got 5 questions for you. You don't know that I'm going to ask these, so best of luck to you. By the way, Anthony, are you a golf fan at all?
Absolutely. I played golf in high school.
Okay.
So I pay attention a little bit.
Okay, who's your favorite player on the tour right now? And I know that it's kind of there's a little bit of parity at the top of the board.
I'll always be a Phil fan. Growing up, I was a lefty, so it's only natural for me to root for Phil, and his swing is something that there's nothing better looking in golf, and I know he's not on the top anymore, or I don't know if he was ever on the top with playing.
He was
Chicago.
close. He was close. He had to win that. When he won the Masters, I want to say it was Easter Sunday in 2006. When he won the Masters, I think that he enabled himself to be a top golfer without having the stigma of being that guy that never won the major on his shoulders.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's my favorite and is someone I always looked up to.
Okay, all right. So without further ado, here are 5 questions. Question number 1. Between Jason Day, Jason Duffner, and Jim Furyk, 2 are Browns fans, and 1 is a Steelers fan. Who's the third, Anthony?
What are those names again?
Jason Day, Jason Duffner, Jim Furyk.
I know Duffner's a Cleveland fan. I think it's Furyk.
Yeah, it is Furyk. Jason Day has just kind of adopted the Buckeyes and all the Cleveland teams because he's living in Northeast Ohio. So, good job. You're off to a good start. This is completely an opinionated question. Question number 2. What is your favorite sports movie, Anthony Joki?
Favorite sports movie? Wow, there's so many of them. I had to go with Major League.
Isn't that just the default?
Yeah, it's the absolute default. The Browns have Draft Day, which stunk, in my opinion. The Cavs don't have a movie, which there could be one in the future. I think. As a kid, I love Space Jam. It was great to see Michael in that kind of environment. But you have to go with Major League.
Yeah, basketball's a tough movie. Is a tough sport to make a movie about, especially if you're going to go true, because it's just hard to get all the the actors that are that tall to play roles. I mean, if you look back at like Blue Chips, I mean, they took everybody that came out, everybody that graduated from college basketball that year and kind of just put them on various teams. I think we put Bobby Hurley on Indiana. We did some crazy stuff. So, and the Cavs, Chris Mills was in that movie too. I would say Major League as well, but I'd give strong consideration to Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington. I think that was a great movie. It was really well done. So the cinematography wasn't fantastic, but it was a good story. So moving on, question number 3. What is your favorite venue outside of Cleveland to see a game?
I haven't been to too many, but I have been to Wrigley and I absolutely loved it. There's so much history there. You can't beat watching a game there on an afternoon. I would love to go to Boston at some point and go to Fenway, but personally, I've experienced Wrigley, and that's something that's hard to live up to or hard to compare to.
Yeah, you know what? I like the obviously I live out west, so the Rose Bowl is a special place. I've been to quite a few major league ballparks, including Wrigley Field. My wife's from Chicago; she's a Cubs fan. Right when the last game I saw was a day game against the Cardinals in 2006, where the Cubs were victorious, and it was just a fun day on the north side of Chicago. So definitely down with that. All right, question number 4. How good is Matthew Dellavedova if he is not wearing a Cavaliers jersey?
Oh, that's a very tough question. I think he's still a decent player, just because of his work ethic and what he does to train, and he goes hard every single game. He's the kind of guy that Celtics fans would absolutely love if he was on their team, because he brings that tough physical mentality to every single game he plays. So I think he's an average player. Does he play as much? I don't know. That's one thing we have David Blatt to thank for, is he really trusted Delly, and he allowed Delly to grow on the floor in the NBA, and he's really benefited from it.
I do a show on Sunday mornings, Sports Byline, Dorf on Sports, which airs from 11 to 1 Eastern on Sundays. And my buddy Dorf, he's a Milwaukee guy. He's a Bucks fan. And he told me how good he thinks Dellavedova would look in a Bucks jersey. And I look at that roster, and I think that he would complement some of the up and comers that they have there in Milwaukee. So that's an interesting thing. But that's going to wrap up 5 questions. In fact, that's just about going to wrap up the first edition of the Lay of the Land. Oh, I didn't ask you question number 5. Question number 5. What is, in your opinion, and you can interpret this question many different ways, the top high school athletic program in Northeast Ohio? I know that football is going to play a big part of that. The revenue sports are a big deal. But if somebody's got, I know you do follow some high school sports. So what's kind of your take, whether it's recent or just cumulative over your lifetime?
Every excuse me, everyone's going to jump to Ignatius or St. Ed's, but and it's going to pain me to say this, but Kirtland, what they do with their size school and the players they have to pick from, such a limited area, to be able to, and this is just a testament to Tiger Laverty. Um, what they do with their players and their program, their weight training program, to be able to consistently compete for a state championship over the past 4 or 5 years is quite incredible. I played them when I was at Fairport, and that's just one game every season. It was going to be absolutely tough, and it was usually 48-55 nothing around halftime. They just get at you. And
I think you need to put some context on that. The village you're from is 1 square mile. The average graduating classes, I'm guessing, are under 100, but which is probably the same case with Kirtland as well.
my graduating class was 39 in Fairport, just to give you an idea.
You know what's funny about that? I think that's actually gone down from when my dad graduated in 1972. I ought to say that he had 51 in his graduating class.
I was part of the Fairport coaching staff for a couple of years, and there was one year where we took Kirtland to the limit. We were winning the game in the third quarter. There's a chance to upset them, and that was the lone year Fairport went to the playoffs, or the first time in 15, 20 years. So, once in a blue moon you compete against them, but they just seem to run the ball down everybody's throats. Their line, I would say they're probably one of the best in the region. They're so close to Menor that obviously if your son's a great football player, that's where you want to go, or you get recruited by Lake Catholic, even though recruiting is not a thing in high school sports, which is complete BS. Um, you know,
I went to an inner city Catholic school. Yeah, I went to Cleveland Central Catholic. So, we were down, we were up West 25th from St. Ignatius, but even some of the, Benedictine, Padua, you kind of suspected there were kids there that weren't attending so that they could attend liturgy and Catholic masses and things like that. If you get my drift, it's kind of funny that you said Kirtland. I was going to write down, I was going to make a sign and actually hold it up for you that said, and you can't say Ignatius or Eds. And the one program that I would have actually had for you would have been Kirtland. And I was hoping to ask you about it. You and my father have the same alma mater, the Fairport Skippers, and every year you play Kirtland. And recently it's been really rough, and my dad's opinion is that they tend not to run up the score. It's hard for them to take their foot off the gas because they run between the tackles, and they play big physical football, and it's not like they could do anything to change their game to slow it down other than to get freshmen and sophomores on the field, and those freshmen and sophomores end up being pretty good football players.
Yeah, I mean, they put it in their freshman team, and they still beat up on Fairport a little bit, just to give you the kind of program that Kirtland has. They've built something special there. Depending on how long Tiger wants to stay, whenever, I would say if there's an opening, at Menor or Ez or Ignatius, maybe he'll leave at some point. But as long as he's there, they're going to be the team to beat every single year in Division 6.
Nice, nice. Well, I want to give a shout out to your Fairport bowling program, which is coached by my cousin Jerry Rich. They always see for a small town like that. They have the bowling alley right in town there, Rich Lanes, and they get these kids out there. They don't have a lot of open bowling; it's all leagues, so the teams have the opportunity to practice. So. Just a cheap little family shout out there, but I figured it was within the context of what we're speaking about. Hey, Anthony, that's going to kind of do it for the show here. Let me get the plug stuff out for you. He's Anthony Jokey, publisher at Forever Rebuilding, co-host of Too Deep in the Queue with Chris Poltrone. He's on Twitter at Anthony Jokey, and you can follow everything that's going on at Forever Rebuilding, which includes the writings of yours truly, Jeff Rich. And they're on Twitter at Rebuilding CLE. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at by Jeff Rich. That's going to do it for the lay of the land. Hopefully we'll be back next week. Until then, I'm just a swing and a long drive away. Good night, everyone.